But I do want to read part of the introduction to it because it really points something out very powerful. Oh, there we go. That drives me insane. There's a delay there, and I hear myself like 10 seconds later, and it fucks me up. So, the Havamal, and the introduction to this is the last paragraph probably says it all. It says, few gnomic collections in the world's literary history present sounder wisdom more tersely expressed than the Havamal. Like the Book of Proverbs, it occasionally rises to lofty heights of poetry. If it presents the worldly wisdom of a violent race, it also shows noble ideas of loyalty, truth, and unfaltering courage. And I think that's something that for every man that and woman too, those ideas of loyalty, truth, and unfaltering courage are kind of part of that ideal that we were talking about, the ability to enact that. And I know for myself, I always want it to be some grand stand up display of, the kind of stuff that kind of pulls at your heartstrings to where you have to do it. And maybe that was just being from being in the infantry all those years. But I know that other people feel the same way. People that get in the ring, people that go do their time, people that are still walking the streets. Noble ideas of loyalty, truth, and unfaltering courage. That is maybe we should begin to consider that as something that is some of the foundational concepts of everything we're trying to do in every aspect of our life, including when we're wrong. And it may not necessarily be the point of it being wrong, but the reaction could be wrong. There's many things about it that could be wrong. The ideas of loyalty, truth, and unfaltering courage. It also gives us a real clear litmus test of who we should deal with and who we should not deal with. If they're not loyal, if they're not truthful, if they do not have courage, um, there's no need to waste our time with them. And that's kind of how it goes in life. It makes it a hell of a lot easier, I can tell you that. But we'll start with stanza one and we'll go from there, give a little comment about it and see what we say. Within the gates there a man shall go, full warily let him watch, full long let him look about, for little he knows where a foe may lurk and sit in the seats within. Now, not everybody's going to deal with that. But I don't care if you're walking into the boardroom of a Fortune 500 company or walking into mealtime at the insane asylum. Um, you better pay attention. We don't walk in there talking about how important we are because that never goes over right. That will always draw unwarranted and unnecessary attention. And my daddy always told me, he said, every time you go looking for trouble, you're probably going to find it. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get your ass whipped because of it. And, there's some truth in that, especially when I was younger. Every time I went to look for trouble, man, it was usually everything I could do to hang in there. But we don't know what other people are thinking about us. They will tell us things. They will say things that, give that favorable impression, but you can't tell if they're doing it to see if you'll blow smoke up their ass or if it just makes them look important or, whether it's filling some kind of void they think they have. We don't know where a foe may lurk. So we should pay attention. And that's pretty sound advice. I mean, that's quite frankly, you start off the gate with something like that. That means a lot. There's a lot to it. You keep your eyes open and sometimes your mouth shut. Pay attention. Listen with your ears. Stanza two, hail to the giver. Now that's important there. Hail to the giver. A guest has come. Where shall the stranger sit? Swift shall he be who with sword shall try the proof of his might to make. So the problem with this one is the first two lines probably have nothing to do with the second two lines. They were put together by somebody that finally put it together. Hail to the giver, a guest has come, where shall the stranger sit? Well, typically you give them a nice place at the table. You don't put them at the end like there's some scully mate or something. You bring them in there and sit them down at the table. That takes a lot of confidence to let somebody come in and be a part of your table. It takes a lot of personal courage and strength to do that. Now, the second part of that, swift shall he be who with sword shall try the proof of his might to make. Yeah, if you're going to come in there, it's the general danger of backing one's view with the sword. So if we're going to sit there and do it, and we're going to try to press the point with the sword instead of intelligence, logic, reason, passion, what have you, you're you better be swift, because chances are you're probably going to have to kill that person. I mean, look at what Genghis Khan did. He didn't waste time with people. He just slaughtered the whole village and took it over and made it his own and conquered half the known world at the time. So there's a mindset that goes with that. That's very difficult to cultivate. And once you do cultivate it, you might find it's not one you want, because it's nothing short of savage. I mean, you have to maintain a savage mindset to do that. So, stanza 3. Fire he needs, who with frozen knees has come from the cold without. Food and clothes must the farer have, the man from the mountains come. Odin is sometimes referred to as the man from the mountain. And that time there were lots of people that wandered around. There were vulvas, and there were bards, and there were individuals that represented what they suspected was the will of Odin. And the priestly class played some part in this. If you haven't read the ancient Teutonic priesthood, I think you really should. It gives a really clear insight about some of this stuff that we discuss as the role that these individuals played. But you never knew if the man that showed up, it could be Rig, it could be Gefjon, it could be Odin, it could be Freya. Odin typically being the man from the mountain. That's where Sigurd found him when they were tossed about on the stormy sea. Fire he needs, who with frozen east has come from the cold without. Treat everybody with kindness. That's something that we don't always do, because there's a lot of the people in this world that they don't have our best interest at heart. They're not interested in paying attention or looking at us or dealing with us, or they will actively stab us in the back. But one of the hallmarks of great strength is the ability to show kindness. If somebody comes to the house, show some hospitality. I know down south, where I'm from, we would show up unannounced and uninvited at second or third cousins' homes, and we would be welcomed in with food and drink and have a sit down, and we would talk for an hour or so. And it was just a part of the way we lived, because they were confident in who they are, what they'd achieved, and that it was family. So that really is kind of a beautiful stanza when you look at it. Offering kindness to a stranger that shows up on your doorstep. Now, we live in a world today where there are fucking weirdos out there, and it's very difficult to do. Fortunately, that's covered further on down in the Havamal. It says, high must the bar be raised, or something like that. You can't just let everybody in. But we do, when dealing with people, we need to be thinking about kindness. See, all of us have been given some kind of label. All of us have had some kind of conviction in the court of public opinion about the quality of person that we are. And we can't fight that. We can't get online and battle that nebulous enemy of somebody who might not even be fucking real. But what we can do is set that example. I know some of these people that they call racist and homophobic and all these other things. When you talk to them, you get to know them. And they can be some of the best people you've ever met. They can be solid as a damn rock. Now, you may not agree with their politics. You might not agree with what they decide to dislike. But when you're dealing with them, there's a confidence involved. There's an exchange of confident men dealing with each other. And this is kind of what that's talking about. Because when two people like that get together, I hate to sound corny with it, but is that not where the strength of our spirituality comes from? The tribe, the group, the people we deal with honorably. I know I've been a dick about it without reason, just because I was trying to boost my ego. But when I look at people today, Juanita Hargraves told me a long time ago, she was 91. I first spent 16 weeks in a treatment facility when I was 17 years old. And when I got out, I was this young kid going into these AA meetings in like 1987 and 1988, 1989, trying to sober up, turn things around. First trip to the, you know what I mean, jails, institution, and death, or their cult, or the result of that lifestyle. But Juanita told me something a long time. She said, everybody has the right to be wrong. And I've thought about that for the last 30 years. Everybody has the right to be wrong. When we look at all of the things going on around with all the people, if we have the courage to allow them the right to be wrong, provided it's not destroying our fucking society as much of it is, we find ourselves a clear path where we might consider a course of action instead of simple retort and opposition with words. Because at some point we do need to take action, and that might include running for political office. That might include seeking a better paying job. That might include working with a lobbying group. That might include committing ourselves to an idea higher than the one that we currently have. It's interesting if that came out. Water and towels and welcoming speech should he find who comes to the feast. If renown he would get, and again be greeted. Wisely and well must he act. So it's not all on the host. There's an obligation when you show up as a guest. When you show up as a guest, there are certain aspects of who we are that we probably should set aside. The staunch ideas of the opinions that we hold may not necessarily be welcomed in that home. And yet here we have found ourselves in it. Why? What are we here to learn? What are we here to see? Set the example first, then lower the boom. Set the example first. But when the guest shows up, he has an obligation to act with the decency of good, confident, competent, powerful men and women. So now we have two individuals on equal ground that can have a discussion about what it means, or just the weather, if nothing else. And that changes the dynamics of everything. I'm reminded when I was younger, I remember my grandparents would tell me there were two things we didn't talk about in polite conversation. And maybe it's kind of a Southern thing, but we didn't talk about religion or politics. And everybody got along real well. And we've set that to the side now. And now look at the fucking shit mess we have to deal with or live under. It's absolutely ridiculous. So when we come to be the guest at someone's house, and again be greeted wisely and well must he act. Go in there and act like a good man that you are. Go in there and act like the competent, strong, powerful woman that you are. And then, yes, these are what I follow. If it ever comes up, may not have to. She might find out 2 or 3 weeks. It's okay if people don't understand where that comes from right off the bat. Eventually it's going to show up. Oh, they're really that? No kidding. Well, I know him and I met him a while and he was really, that's the dynamics of what so much of what we work with. That's where the strength of it comes from. Which must he have who wanders wide, but all is easy at home. At the witless man, the wise shall wink when among such men he sits. It is easy at home. This is where we get to let our guard down and be a dick and sit around with our pants unbuttoned, watching TV, swilling beer, or working out in the basement, or creating something, or crafting, or doing something, or reading, or studying, or any of the pastimes that individuals do when they're spending time at home. It's easy at home. When we step out that front door, we are really, and especially today, we are really confronted with a world that could give a shit less whether or not we succeed. Now, if you do succeed, every one of them bastards will want to come sit at your table. But until such time, you really have no use for you. And that's the world we have to contend with. Now, our challenge is to create that table where they would want to come and feast. It's just that simple. Create that table where they would want to come and feast. And it's going to have to be based on principles instead of personalities. And I took that straight out of the big book, and I ain't ashamed of it. Of AA. But those are the wits we got to have when we wander wide. A man shall not boast of his keenness of mind, but keep it close to his breast. To the silent and wise does ill seldom come when he goes as guest to a house. For a faster friend one never finds than wisdom tried and true. And that goes back to everybody has the right to be wrong. I sit in a lunchroom at a, I work for a very big corporation. I for the first time in my life, well, that's not fucking true. This is probably the largest corporation I have ever worked for, most prominently named, most successful corporation I've ever, and I have a very good job there. When I sit in the lunchroom, they have their social distancing and everything, and lots of people talk about lots of things, and I don't agree with all of them. I don't agree with several of them, but but what I've started to do is pay attention to the passion with which these people believe in these ideas, because invariably they will say something else as to why they think that so strongly. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm a little bit tired or I'm a little bit frustrated, I want to stand up and say, "Are you fucking stupid?" But to the silent and wise does ill seldom come. Everybody has the right to be wrong. So I let them go on with themselves, but I know them as people as well. I know them as good people. Um, so I just let them be wrong. And it doesn't, the thing of it is, it doesn't take anything from me, but it also gives me some insight into what I might really be up against at a grander level. And that's something we should pay attention to as well. The knowing guest who goes to the feast in silent attention sits. With his ears he hears, with his eyes he watches. Thus wear wise men on. That's exactly what I fucking do. You know, if somebody were to talk, they were talking when the little Capitol riot happened. And there was much ado, and there was wailing and gnashing of teeth, and they were talking about Trump being a racist and and the Proud Boys being racist. And I'm like, oh my god. And then somebody actually said something in support of the anti-fascists, and I almost had a conniption. I mean, I literally like to split my head, almost came off, because those bastards have given me a hard fucking time before, and I don't like them. But I like my job, so I had to keep my mouth shut. Now, since then, quietly, with kindness, with intelligence, with all of those wonderful characteristics that are a part of who we are, I've sat down and got to talk with those individuals one on one, not to be abrasive or aggressive or confrontational, but to have a discourse. Come to find out, they simply don't know what's really going on. They get their news from one place. They simply are not aware of all of the dynamics that we, as people that are typically opposed, are aware of. And they become good friends. And they will now sometimes say things to me that are more in line with the way that I think than with what I heard them talking about. Silent and wise, allow everybody to be wrong, and then sit down and set that example, which is what I've done. I'm not their boss, so they're not kissing my ass. I'm just another dude, you know. Happy the one who wins for himself favor and praise is fair. Less safe by far is the wisdom found that is hid in another's heart. When you ask somebody their opinion of you, and when you're in a confrontation with someone that you love or used to love, and they begin to tell you what's hid in their heart, you begin to realize just exactly what that means. Because everybody has an opinion about somebody. Everybody has an idea. There are many versions of you walking around this world as there are people that interact with you, which is a weird thing to think about. Because everybody's going to pick up on something that bounces off of their personality. And so there's like a million different Brians walking around, all with, picking their butt and shit, just kind of, who knows? Who knows what they're doing? But somebody's got all these opinions about you. And we can't believe in that. We cannot sacrifice what we want to become with this truth and loyalty and unfaltering courage, if we're continually sacrificing the best of who we are so we might be accepted through the lens of public approval. And that's kind of where that comes from. Because if it comes down to it, it's like there's no honor among thieves. If some guy that you run with and everybody used to party with gets popped and he's facing hard time, every fucking time they'll call him in, want to talk to him. Let me have some names. Let's see what we got. They'll build a case, get some time off, maybe this, maybe that, maybe, there are people right now that are making a living as snitches, getting paid money. Less wisdom, less safe by far is the wisdom found that is hid in another's heart. And sometimes people resent success. People hate watching other people succeed because it shows how they're not doing it. And so this is where that kindness comes into play. If you are enjoying success, stick out a hand and pull the people up around you, pull their asses up, pull them along with you, kicking and screaming if you have to, push them forward, pull them up. Lift a brother up, man. Come on. But it is happy when you win favor and praise for yourself. And that's how you do it, by building others. And being the human that I am, there's a couple of guys that I'd rather kiss somebody's ass in public and give them an hour to draw a crowd before I built them up. But to be who I'm supposed to be, I probably need to do it. And so I got to reconcile that within myself. It ain't their fucking problem. It's mine. I'm the one that's got to contend with that. So, but that's the wisdom of the Havamal. That's how we win favor and praise for ourselves. A better burden may no man bear for wanderings wide than wisdom. It is better than wealth on unknown ways, and in grief a refuge it gives. And that's one of the most powerful promises that I think I know of. Better burden may no man bear for wanderings wide than wisdom. It is better than wealth on unknown ways, and in grief a refuge it gives. Now, what can we consider wisdom? So, as you get older and all the mistakes that you make, you watch people that are younger than you try to pull the same kind of bullshit, and you know exactly what they're thinking, saying, and feeling. You know exactly what's going on with them because of their actions. Because 9 times out of 10, since we're all human and none of us have created any new emotions, we know what they're doing. You can predict how somebody's going to act in the yard. You can predict how somebody's going to act in the ranks. You can predict how somebody's going to act in the ring if you've been doing it a while, if you've garnered the experience. All of that experience we can call wisdom. And that wisdom is better than wealth on unknown ways because we understand people, because we understand ourselves. We understand how we've acted in certain situations. We understand how we've done things in the past. All those sneaky things, like if you've been out too late, you want to sneak in before the old lady catches you. You don't close any doors and you pass out on the couch. That's an old trick. One that I've done many times because I didn't want to hear it from the old lady. So, but it's also a grief from refuge, a refuge from grief. Now, we don't have a lot in our spirituality or our faith or whatever you wish to call it, however you wish, it's most comfortable for you to call it. We don't have a lot of consolation. There's not a lot of titty baby, it's going to be okay, it'll be all right, Jesus, take care of it, blah, wailing and crying and slinging snot. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to cry and sling snot. There's some things in life that are going to hurt. Mom and daddy die, you have problems with a kid, you're going to feel it. And you're probably going to shed a tear. Well, whatever, okay, go for it. But this wisdom, it tells me right there that if I cultivate wisdom, if I cultivate that understanding that I perceive to be wisdom, I might find a refuge from grief. I might be able to begin to understand and legitimately mourn loss instead of engage in a pity party. And that's a big difference. And there's a lot of freedom in that. That means something to me. That means something very important to me that I like to work on for it's better than wealth on unknown ways. Because, hey, I'm just like everybody else. If I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'll sit there and feel sorry for myself. That's not going to help a damn thing, is it? Little pity party bullshit. But when my father died and I needed a refuge from the grief, that's the phrase that kept going through my mind. How do I cultivate the wisdom? So I had to begin to understand myself and my father both to figure that out, to get through some of it. Now, that's not to say I still ain't got a case of the ass at him, because I do. But be that as it may. Now, the next one is a better burden may no man bear, excuse me, for wanderings wide than wisdom. Worse food for the journey he brings down a field than an overdrinking of ale. So my dad and my uncle, we went to see my mom's father, my grandpa Gocher, and he had a bar. He had a basement, he had a bar and a racquetball court downstairs. And it was a fully stocked bar. It was a nice damn thing. And he offered my uncle a drink. My uncle said something I'll never forget. I think I was like 16. He said, "Whoa, no, I'm way too far from home to start drinking now." And for some reason that has stuck with me. And it's true. You know, if you get way outside of your home territory and start showing your ass because you've been drunk, it's a good chance you'll end up in jail and get stuck there for a minute. Be careful with that kind of shit. We got to keep our wits about us when we're out there, because when we're away from our home territory, we're not amongst the friends and family we grew up with. We're amongst a bunch of people that consider us a stranger, an outsider, different. And I assure you, you walk into a bar up here in northern Minnesota with a ponytail and gray hair and boots. Yeah, they look at it. They don't ever say nothing because they're usually the most passive aggressive people I've ever met. But I'm sorry. I do like to stir up shit sometimes when I go in there, because there's this bike club in there, and it's just killing me not to just fuck with them. But I digress. That's the rottenness in me. But that right there tells me, don't do it, Brian. You're a long way from me. You're a fair piece off the mark. So, less good there lies that most believe in ale for mortal men. For the more he drinks, the less is man of his mind the mastery hold. We have all seen the war on drugs. We've seen the failure that it is. We see the people that are in jail for trying to smoke a joint. We have seen what methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine have done to our friends and to us. But anybody that's lived that lifestyle knows that the craziest fucking shit we have ever done is when we were drunker than hell. The most violent, the most dangerous, the most out of control is when we get drunk. I don't know what it is about that shit, but it will. So right there it tells us, less good there lies than most believe in ale for mortal men. And it's true. The more he drinks, the less is man of his mind the mastery hold. Start thinking a thought. Next thing you know, it's reality. Next thing you know, we're acting on it, and we're off and running, and here we go. And it's just one of those things we got to pay attention to. I've seen it at events. I've seen, people sitting around the fire after at the end of Sumble, and somebody pushed somebody a little too hard while they were fooling around, and the next thing you know, here we go. And because they're drunk. Next morning they'll figure it out. They'll sit down, they'll have breakfast or coffee together, and it'll all be over. But in the moment, it didn't need to happen at all. And sometimes you can say and do some things that you can't take back. Sometimes you can say and do some things that bring an end to a beautiful thing. Sometimes you can say and do some things that truly cause a lot of pain to other individuals. Over beer, the bird of forgetfulness broods and steals the minds of men. With heron's feathers fettered I lay, and in Gunnloth's house was held. Now, heron's feathers are big, pretty things. So he was drunk, very drunk in Gunnloth's house. Drunk I was dead drunk, when with Fjalar wise I was. 'Tis the best of drinking if back one brings his wisdom with him home. So there's a place and time for it all. Gunnloth's house was not the place to be bound, fettered with forgetfulness, broods with heron's feathers. But with Fjalar, this compatriot, this individual that he can deal with, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing. The problem with the alcoholic mindset and the problem with most of us is we don't have that kind of principle hammered into us from the time we grow up. From a very young age, if those two ideas are put into our mind, what would it look like? Would we still have the problems that we have? What would our minds be thinking instead of some of the thoughts that, oh, I can get away with it? Because that's typically what my thought process, oh, I can get away with it. And if I can't, fuck them. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good at all, does it? So if a God can't handle it, what makes us think we can? The son of a king shall be silent and wise, and bold in battle as well. Bravely and gladly a man shall go till the day of his death is come. There's no other way to approach life. If we want to trudge the road of happy destiny, or do we want to bravely and gladly a man shall go till the day of his death is come? That's a reminder that some of the things that are being said here, we might want to be paying attention to with honesty and with the courage of self-examination, with the integrity of taking responsibility for our actions, with nobility, because that's the son of a king. Silent and wise, and bold in battle as well. Now, bold in battle is important because if you've read the culture of the Teutons, it says that every member of the war party was trying to outdo the prince, and the prince, not anybody was going to outdo. So everybody's out there competing, giving it 110% to be the most successful, the best cheered, to outdo the guy. The very spirit of competition was a thread, a fiber of their ability to compete on the battlefield with other individuals, other communities. Well, shit, yeah, they're going to row a boat across the North Sea and then get out and then whoop wholesale ass for 2 days. You need to think about that. You just are rowing and rowing and rowing and then get out and be ready to whip ass for 2 days. That's a bad dude. Well, that was their mindset. And that's the mindset we should have. Now, how do we apply it? Where do we apply it the best? Bravely and gladly, bold, silent, and wise, bold in battle. Well, everything we just talked about spoke of it. And if we want to consider ourselves as these sons of these royal houses of Europe that most of us trace our ancestry back to, well, it behooves us to begin to adopt that mindset of being silent and wise, bold in battle. And that could be bold in business. That could be bold in any number of ways. And bravely and gladly, because if you're being silent and wise and bold in battle, you're going to be enjoying success in no uncertain terms, in whatever arena you decide to pursue it. Bravely and gladly, a man shall go to the day of his death has come. To me, that looks like another kind of promise of this way of life. I fucking hate that term using promise too, but I ain't got a better one, guys. But that's a suggestion there to me that there's something good here. There's something real good here if we pay attention to it. The sluggard believes he shall live forever if the fight he faces not, but age shall not grant him the gift of peace, though spears may spare his life. You got to fight for shit. You got to be bold in battle. You know, nobody's going to hand, now, obviously, if you win the lottery, somebody's going to hand it to you. But for most of us, we're going to have to work at it. We're going to have to get in there and get our arms dirty up to the fucking armpit, working our ass off to enjoy that kind of success. Now, cowardice is a whole nother story, and not everyone can relate to that kind of cowardice. Not everyone can relate to the big three, as I call them, be that combat in the military, uh, confrontation on the yard, or confrontation in the ring. Those are the big three of most men that they have to contend with. Or that's typically has what's proven in today's world to be the breakdown of it. Or you know what? There's another way to think of it too, and that's the hazing that young men go through to become part of some kind of community. Those individuals that dodge that, well, they'll never know the gift of peace, will they? Because in their minds, they lay down their head at night. Well, maybe I could have done that. You don't know until you try. So, like everything else in this world, there's more than one layer to even just that one phrase. So when the fight comes up, we got to face it, no matter what. It would behoove us to learn how to fight. And that takes effort, and it will hurt, and it requires dedication and commitment. So now all of a sudden we've got dedication, struggle, and commitment. That's the forging of man, isn't it? That's why they call him a sluggard and not a man. The fool is agape when he comes to the feast. He stammers or else is still. But soon, if he gets a drink, it is seen what the man of the mind is like. Mind of the man is like. Yeah, that's about right. See the village idiot come stammering in there and needing his first drink for the day about 10 o'clock in the morning. And he'll sit there and maybe kind of stammer and mutter under his breath and just kind of sit there waiting on the shakes to go away with his first drink. And give him about an hour, though, and he will be able to tell you about everything. He will have a full body of knowledge that is as comprehensive as it might seem, having never done any of it. We got to be aware of that. So where do I look like a fool most often? Most often it's relationships. I mean, that's just where it is. And I write books about it and everything else because I'm trying to learn it. Give me a drink, though, and you'll see what the mind of the man is really like. And it may not necessarily be the same thing that sometimes I'm talking about when I'm sober. Now, is that what I want to be in life? Is that what I want people to perceive? No. Because those things, the words of a drunk or a sober man's thoughts, we are taught a lot of things as we grow up. We are given a lot of information. We see a lot of examples. We see a lot of bullshit. And we remember that. And it plays on repeat. And when we get in certain situations, well, then all of a sudden we get a validation of it. How do we unlearn that? Because this is kind of what it's talking about. We got to unlearn that because it's a weakness of the highest order. If we have those thoughts, have not contended with them, and then as soon as we get drunk, we start running off the fucking mouth. That's a weakness. And it's something we got to work on. So this is one of the requirements to be able to act like a son of a king, silent and wise. He alone is aware who has wandered wide and far abroad has fared, how great a mind is guided by him that wealth of wisdom has. So that's fairly clear. You know, if you've been around the world, if you've been to several different foreign countries, if you've been across these states, if you've got beyond your community and began to interact with other individuals and held your own and began to cultivate wisdom, began to cultivate understanding, you're going to begin to understand what that really means. So that's not to point out that that man's traveled and he's great. And what it means is get up and go. Get up and begin to wander. Build that awareness. Build that wisdom. Get in a strange situation. Be silent and wise. Observe. Pay attention. Pay attention for the enemy at the table. But go and see and do. We were built. The human being is the perfect vehicle to travel literally every surface this world has to offer. And I know people that have never left their state. Some have never left their county. Never had to. How great could that wisdom be? Go and see and do. Travel far abroad, travel afield, work someplace in a different state, see how other people operate. Louis L'Amour, when he was writing, I remember one time I read, he wrote all those great westerns everybody loved. I've read several of them. But he worked his way around the world as a merchant marine. He went and did and seen. He lived a life of high adventure. And I remember a battalion commander telling us one time when I was in the infantry at Fort Hood, we were talking about a mission we were fixing to go do. And he was talking to all of us. We were all listening, and he was giving this talk. And he's like, boys, it's going to be men. It's going to be a bunch of high adventure. And I remember that resonated so powerfully with me. And when I reenlisted for light infantry in Alaska, I got to live that. I got to see that. I got to walk through mountains on glaciers and see bears and moose and hide in the woods and at 50 degrees below zero, doing all of these great high things. I got lost on the Arctic tundra. I've been the whole length of Alaska. That's life. That's what it's about. Now here I am in Minnesota from Oklahoma, working a job at a big corporation, entirely different from anything I've ever fucking done. Learning. Living a life of high adventure. To find that expression, my sons will always know. My daughter will too. She's with me now. But that's not to point out who's greater than anybody else is. That's to suggest, go do it. Get out there and experience the world. Shun not the mead, but drink in measure. Speak to the point or be still, for rudeness none shall rightly blame thee if soon thy bed thou seekest. Don't sit there and be a teetotaler. Some people can't handle it. Most people, other people can. But have the common sense to speak to the point or be still. And if it's time to go to bed, don't let somebody talk, oh, I just have one more. Stick to your guns. Oh, you know what? I've had too much. I'm out. It's not rude. That's what's expected of a good man. The greedy man, if his mind be vague, will eat till sick he is. The vulgar man, when among the wise, to scorn by his belly is brought. I like using that too, to insult people. The greedy man, if his mind be vague, will eat till sick he is. And that may not necessarily mean food. If you're a greedy man, so let's say you're caught in the throes of some kind of addiction or some kind of neurotic behavior or some kind of idea. I don't know if you're binging and purging or overeating or sex or drugs or alcohol or any of the various neuroses that seem to be this cancerous thread that, for all intents and purposes, while we look at it bad, it seems to be the only thing that seems to sort the wheat from the chaff at this point. Those people that make it come out the other side to become good people. Those people that don't make it die. And while we look at it as a cancerous thread across society, quite frankly, it's the only thing separating the wheat from the chaff and seeing who has it and who don't, who's worthy of continuing on and who ain't. And that's a cold, shitty thing to say. A lot of people are going to say that. But do you see another venue where that's happening? Do you see any other thing that's happening that's challenging someone to contend with the dragons inside their own heart instead of railing against the imaginary dragons of Don Quixote? Nope, I don't. Because there ain't no fathers out there saying, hey, you boys need to do the blah, blah, blah. And very few mothers are trying to teach a young woman how to endure. But they're learning it themselves, and they're learning it the hard way, and they're probably learning it the best way. But their mind is vague at that point before they come to that realization and that awakening. And they will eat till they're sick. And it's a horrible thing to see. And anybody that's ever watched anybody go through it, it's always a beautiful relief and a wonderful smile, and your heart's full of love when you see them make it out the other side. And sometimes they don't. The vulgar man, when among the wise, to scorn by his belly is brought. We don't want to be some arrogant, braggadocious, vulgar, potty mouth, shit talking son of a bitch showing up talking about how smart they are. Every wise man's going to look at that, and they're going to look at the person, and they're going to understand immediately the avalanche of bullshit that this person is pushing off as if they might know something. the guy talking about it never gets it. I'll do one more and then we're going to do some, well, I'll answer any questions. It's about 9 o'clock. I got Scarlett needs to go to bed. The herds know well when home they shall fare, and then from the grass they go. But the foolish man his belly's measure shall never know aright. You know, even a dog knows when he's done wrong. If he shits on the floor and you point a finger at him and put his tail between his legs and leave the room and run off, the herds know well when home they shall fare. You know, they know the passage of time, the day and the night. They know when feeding time is. You see them running across the field, moving their heads off. And then from the grass they go. But the foolish man keeps at it. Foolish man beats his head against a wall, and he never knows right. Let me try one more time. Let me try one more time. It's like sitting at a slot machine of life. Oh, I'm going to do one more. I'll get the jackpot. Let me do one more. Oh, it was a jackpot. Let me get one more. Oh, maybe this one. Maybe this one. Now your whole paycheck's gone. And your belly's not full, and you never knew aright. I have seen women cry about losing an entire paycheck because they got caught up gambling, because they just knew they were up real big one time, and then it kept going and thought they could double it, and they never got anything out of it. Life is the same way. Life is the same way. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of honesty to look at ourselves and realize I've been a fool. But this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to do when we stand up to be these people that want to embrace an idea of nobility and loyalty and unfaltering courage. Okay, that's it for that part of it. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to discuss? I'd be happy to go over it with you.
I'll hop in with 2 quick comments.
Oh, hell.
But no, first it's first one is about your metaphor about gambling there.
Yes.
I spent my 20s, my mid to late 20s running around with a pool hustler.
I remember. Yeah, I know.
I was the one who made sure he didn't get beat up.
You're the reason I thought of that.
But what he used to say, and what all the real gamblers, the real hustlers used to say, is that their goal was to get the sucker to get their nose open. And that was the term that they used, get your nose open.
Yep.
And if that means that they get a little bit up, then fine, they get a little bit up, because, you know, only bums quit somebody winner. You can't quit me winner. What are you doing? You got to let me at least get a chance to get even. And of course, now once that happens, they get even, and then it's, you know, you were so close. Oh, and before you know it, the guy's lost his whole paycheck.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's that's what the casino wants. If you get your nose open, you're a sucker.
Oh yeah. And
so that's, you know, for whatever that's worth. And the other thing is more of a funny thing about Louis L'Amour. You mentioned his book. Yeah. He once said, why somebody once asked him why it takes so many shots for the people to die in his books. He said, because I get paid by the word.
That's exactly right. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I read his autobiography one time and I was really impressed by it. And then of course I always appreciate those autobiographies of men that have done that. Like Captain John Smith. I read his autobiography and it was amazing. The dude was sold into slavery and he escaped and came over and became a mayor, and it was he just was an amazing dude out there wandering, living life. You know, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, all these individuals they really exemplify the spirit of the American West and the American settlement and the American expansion. A pragmatic, solid, no bullshit kind of approach to life. And they went where they wanted to, and they did, and they went and seen and did. And, you know, we live kind of in a world now where what does that frontier look like now? Well, it's a little bit different. You know, the frontiers of technology, the frontiers of the ocean, the outer space, it's changing, but that passion should still be within all of us. And I think for us, ours is this kind of spiritual exploration. And I know that for some that might sound corny, but that's what we're doing. We're exploring these powerful spiritual concepts and negotiating the emotional undercurrents that have tainted so much of our understanding of what that should be. And then it begins to involve our bodies physically and our minds mentally. And so now we have this broad horizon to explore that, when you think about it, uh, is every bit as grand as the American West or Antarctica or the Amazon or Alaska or any of that stuff, or Mars for that fucking matter. Who knows where it might lead? Who knows? But that's just me.
Well, we've talked about how the average person today has the amount of leisure time of kings
Yep. Yes. Yes.
1,500 years ago. So
Yeah.
this was solely the purview. These kind of explorations were solely the purview of nobility and of the priest class,
Yep.
because they were the only classes that had the amount of time necessary to take part in those kind of activities. When
That's
you're
right.
when you're behind a plow 90 hours, 100 hours a week, you don't have time to start thinking about meditating and getting in touch with the spiritual and the divine.
Right.
But we have that kind of time these days.
We
40,
do have
50
that
hours
kind
a
of
week.
time.
You still have time for meditation. You still have time for spiritual learning, 40, 50 hours a week of work.
It is true. We do have that. We do have that time. I mean, some people want to reject the modern world, and there are certain aspects of it that are just fucking retarded to even look at. But there's the benefit, I think, of some of the convenience that we have is that with a certain amount of discipline, and I really think that the pain that most people go through, be it with divorce or any kind of neuroses or addiction, is the impetus for them to begin to want to explore that horizon. And we live in a world where we have the liberty to do that. So it's really weird. I mean, I can't wholesale condemn all of it because I do see a silver lining, and that being it.
Again, just a kind of a joking comment, but have you ever noticed that the people who speak against the modern world, who don't like the modern world, are the least able, would be the least capable of dealing outside of the modern world?
That
Drop them in 1850 and they'd be fucked.
Yeah, it's true. It's a weird it's a weird dichotomy that the people that bitch most about it can only do so within the confines of the safety of it. But so we got to develop wisdom far beyond what is it Albert Einstein said? We cannot achieve solutions to the problems of the day with the same level of thinking we use to create them. And we have a faith and spirituality that's telling us, go earn some wisdom. Yeah, that's neat shit to me. Okay, has anybody got anything else? Well, tomorrow is Monday, and
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Real quick, what were we reading from, boss?
Sacred Text Archives, Internet Sacred Text Archives, the Prozetta. It is the
It was part of the Prozetta. Okay.
No, it's the Poetic Edda, the Poetic Edda by Henry Adam Bellows, 1936, at sacredtext.com.
Okay. All right. I just thought I'd ask before I let y'all get off.
Yeah, that's one of if you get that, there's a lot of footnotes in that tell what those names mean and what all those words mean and where this came from and where that came from. They tend to rely a little bit on Boog too much for me. But it's like everything else, you sort the wheat from the chaff, but I really have appreciated that one in particular.
Hey, Brian, I appreciate it too when you made the observation that in terms of like drinking to excess, like
Yes.
if it's not good for the gods, how could it possibly be good for us?
Exactly right. I mean, if they can't handle it, I mean,
I can't handle one drink, so I'm like, I'll just let the gods drink for me then.
You're right. There's a whole bunch of them in Valhalla. I mean, they're all drunk.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Brian.
Hey, man, I appreciate y'all. And I appreciate everybody that joined in tonight. Like I always say, tomorrow's Monday. Go out there and grab it by the nose and whip its ass and set the example.
Thanks, man.
And I'm always available.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, Brian.